it's kind of weird. Like money also is like not important anymore. It's like time's important, family's important, relationships are important, your health's important. Like other things become more important. I'd say money now for me is not like money doesn't motivate me at all for like what I would do with money at all. Like there's almost zero motivation for that. Money is more of a resource. It's like, okay, if we've got X amount of dollars, we can do, we can bring in our own FDA approval team. We got, this amount over here, we can bring in, we can buy these insurance contracts over here for billing in these new states we want to go into. It just becomes more of like a chessboard move than anything. But I would say on the flip side, the first 5 years, money was super motivating. Like I was motivated by money because like, I did grow up poor. We didn't have a nice house and was living in an apartment. And I'm like, I want to have kids one day and let them have like, a backyard and a pool and a good place to grow up. And that did super motivate me. So I think that's kind of, money's like one of those tricky things. It can be a big motivator, but then, you reach a certain point, it's like law of diminishing returns. Maybe money's not as motivating anymore. So.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 200. Clark, what's going on? What's going on in your world?
Dude, doing well. We were actually out together the last 5 days or something. So this intro and then the last intro we were able to record in person. So that's really only the second time we've done this in person together.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely hasn't been very many, but super excited. I mean, we kind of gave a few teasers out that we spent a bunch of time with a bunch of millionaires, got some invaluable content. I mean, we sat down with, I can't even remember how many. Some were, as short as 10 minutes and some were as long as 30 and 40 minutes. So we've got a lot of great bonus content, sat down with some very wealthy individuals, people all over the business spectrum, personal spectrum, on how they built their wealth and investment allocation, and really unique opportunity for us, especially with the podcast and sitting down with some of these people.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Obviously, you just mentioned some bonus content coming up. Also, some book giveaways. We'll be giving away a couple copies of Morgan Housel's book, the popular book, The Psychology of Money. That's, I think, one of the top sellers, right, on Amazon right now. So stay tuned for that here in the next, probably the next month or so. But yeah, some fun bonus content coming up.
So Clark, we were talking a little bit about just, summer's winding down. Americans right now are spending, $765 more this summer than normal. Part of that, I think, has probably been some of the stimulus money, but also I think some of this pent up demand to, do some things to get out as we've been, kind of gone through the cycles of several of these lockdowns. What effects is that going to have on the economy going forward? Just in general in the short term here, but also maybe in the long term.
Yeah, so that comes from a recent CNBC survey. We just found that people are spending $765 more a month than they were in 2020 as they start to travel and move around a little bit more. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I think I look at what I've been doing. I think we've probably, I don't know about $765 a month, but, we took a good vacation. We were able to get out a little bit. Obviously, we're on a trip now. So I think I've probably spent more money, and I think that makes sense. I mean, people are pent up, obviously, for most of 2020. So it's true that spending's up. What does that do for the economy? I mean, the economy's roaring right now. You hear, especially in the fast food industry and in smaller businesses, it's hard to find labor. If you want a job, you can find it. I also read, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, that the amount of available jobs is at like 10 million jobs or something. I could be wrong on the number, but the most open job positions there ever have. So employers are looking for people. And I don't know, I think maybe that's partly why people are spending more, they're earning more. I also heard, just sidebar, I was talking to someone today, he said that his wife works for LinkedIn and said that if a LinkedIn employee elects to, and someone can write in and correct if this is wrong or maybe it's different for a situation, but he said if a LinkedIn employee elects to work from home, they take a 10% reduction in their salary, is at least what happened to his wife. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Just a lot changing, I think, in a post-COVID or trying to get out of a post-COVID world here.
Yeah, definitely be interesting. Something to definitely pay attention to over the next several months. We'll have to look at that. Last week's episode, we had Kevin. He's a 32-year-old CPA. His net worth is just over $1 million, with 80% of his net worth invested in the stock market. He also has about $80,000 a year in household expenses in the bank. And he had an interesting story. Also paid off $40,000 in student loans. So go check that out. That's episode number 199. If you're interested in being on the show, send us an email at millionairesunveiled@gmail.com. Also, if you're interested in submitting a question to one of our millionaires, Ask a Millionaire tab on our website. You can go in the speak pipe and we will play that on one of the episodes, and maybe even ask several millionaires the same question if it's applicable. So this week, been much anticipation for several weeks. We have a multi-decamillionaire. In fact, when we went to, we put out a request, Clark, a few months ago about potentially getting a guest on that was worth over 200, and we got him. And his name's Jeremy. And come to find out, we did the interview, and he's actually worth over 300 probably. Majority that's in his company, but he also does have some real estate and obviously a personal residence and some cash and whatnot. So super interesting interview with him. Super excited, very appreciative of his time and his contributions to reaching out to us, and also his friend who connected us. Super, super solid episode. Obviously we can learn from all of these millionaires, but I think Jeremy dropped some amazing advice that's applicable for all of us. And just understanding, he worked, kind of in a typical W-2 role for a little while after college, and then, took that leap into entrepreneurship and started a business and has grown it substantially over the last several years. And we get into all sorts of things on his journey that he's done to, one, position himself in the way that he has, and some of the unique things that he does with his company to, one, attract talent, retain talent, and just inspire all of us. It's not often that I think we get to sit down with somebody with this level of net worth and what that's taken, and just kind of take a peek behind the curtain to somebody who's built up, that level of net worth. In a lot of ways, Jeremy's extremely humble. I really appreciate him coming on the show and sharing with us. I'm glad that we get to release this and, share it. He's very open on the episode, and just want to make sure that he knows how appreciative we are of his time in this episode, because it is really, it's a gem. So without any further delay, let's get into the episode with Jeremy.
Jeremy, do you want to just give us a little about your background or what you're up to now?
Yeah, so Jeremy Perkins, and I am a founder and CEO of Precision Medical Products. It's a company that I started in my garage about 12 years ago. Self-funded it, grew it. The last 12 years, it's worth about $300 million now. And that's primarily what I'm known for. I've done, angel investing and real estate investing. But that's kind of my claim to fame, if you will, is Precision Medical.
Awesome. And just roughly ballpark net worth is well over 300 then? Yeah,
probably, 320 something. That's probably about the number.
You own 100% of that company?
We did some mergers the last 2 years. So yeah, I think I own now 94% of the company.
So, it's pretty remarkable. First of all, appreciate you coming on the show and being willing to share this. We put out an ad a few weeks ago, and one of Jeremy's buddies kind of contacted him just for our listeners and how we got in contact with Jeremy. So it's pretty remarkable that he's willing to do this. But let's back up here for our listeners. Building a company, you own a majority of it. What was that like? Kind of walk us through the journey that you've been on to get to the point where you are now.
Yeah, I'd say, when we talk about owning like 100% of the company the first 10 years and owning 94% right now, that wasn't necessarily by choice. I tried to honestly get investors to, come in the beginning and invest in the company. Obviously tried to work with banks to get debt financing. And we honestly didn't have any luck. It wasn't even until year 3 that I could even get any kind of line of credit from the bank. I met with countless investors trying to get people to, invest money into into the company to help me start it. I couldn't get anybody. Like, it's really hard to get investors to come on. And even on the other side, I do angel investing now. So I sit on the other side of the fence. So I kind of, you can see it from, from both angles. And it's, there's a lot of risk like in that seed stage investing. So I'm glad now that I didn't have investors because, I still have control. We can kind of, dictate where we want to go in the future. If we want to IPO it, or if we want to do a SPAC or bring in private equity or find a strategic buyer, we kind of, we can dictate our future, which is nice now. But, if I'm being candid, it's in the beginning, I just didn't have a choice. It was like, we would, $99.50 back in the company, just took off a tiny bit to live. And that's kind of what I did this first 5-6 years just to make it.
Yeah, so I want to get into the story and we'll go back on that. Just big picture though, net worth allocation, most of it is in the business still, or you've pulled some of it out? Yeah,
we have. I mean, within if you get really granular, there's the corporate umbrella, and I'm pretty open. I don't really care or hide anything. Precision Holdings owns, that's the main company that I mentioned is 94% I own. There's, intellectual property company in there. There's a company called Ortho8 that does medical manufacturing. There's, Precision Medical Products, which does distribution and so on. So those are, I've always believed in investing in myself. I will probably hit on this, sometime in this next 30, 40 minutes. But, I've done a lot of angel investing, and there's been a couple that have popped and been really good. And there's been a bunch that haven't. And, I just think the best bets I've ever made in my life have always been on my own businesses because I control them. So yeah, that's not, even though it sounds simple, like one business, 300 million, it's really, there's a lot of complexities and different sub companies within that parent company.
And is the real estate under the parent as well, or that's separate?
No, that's held separately. Just a separate LLC that's not associated with the business at all. I think it's more for liability than anything.
Sure. And how many properties do you own there? Is that primarily single family, or do you have multifamily, commercial, office space?
Yeah, we have a 76,000 square foot distribution center in California. We just purchased a 58,000 square foot distribution center in Texas. And then there's a couple property companies that are owned. They're just more residential properties that I own also. So that's kind of
and the warehouses, is that for your medical company, or that's just stuff you own and rent out to somebody else?
Yeah, our we call them distribution centers, but yeah, warehouses basically. The distribution centers are, that's anybody who owns a business. That's one of the best ways with the SBA financing. You only have to put 10% down, and you take up half a distribution center. You take up 51% of it, and you only have to put 10% down, and you can rent out the other 49%. And that's been great for us. We've been, if you get good renters in there and you get a good deal in the building and do the TIs, your renters can almost pay for the rent. And then those buildings have appreciated so much in the last 5-6 years. So we've done very, very well in the buildings. That was kind of been a really good business move.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump back here just to how this all started. And then obviously we'll go into the business and how you were able to build that and some of the angel investing in real estate. So how did this all start? Give us the story of Jeremy here from the beginning.
Yeah. So in the very, very beginning, if there's any listeners growing up, I had no money. It's in college, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to go to college. And then I went to a junior college for 2 years, and I decided I really want to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I had some friends going there, and the school's really, really tough to get into. So I buckled down and I did the 2 years in junior college, but through that, I didn't have any funds or anything to move or anything. So I think I had $300 in my bank account, and I was just basically trying to make that month to month and get by. But so I moved down to San Luis Obispo to go to junior college, and I saw an ad out at Cal Poly as an internship to go sell books door to door. And I don't think anybody, selling books door to door doesn't sound that appealing, but ended up doing that for 6 years, or 4 years through college, and then another 2 years after college. I was a sales manager for them and built a sales organization. That was just a great experience. I think that's probably one of the most defining things that I did in my life, because I learned communication skills. Talking to all those families. We're working 80 hours a week. It was really, really tough. And then through the process, I had to I ended up recruiting people my second year, and then third year, kind of almost became not quite like a pyramid scheme, but you have like a downline of people. And when I graduated college, I had about 100 people underneath me that all sold. It was so valuable to experience, because later when I started my company, it was just like second nature to run weekly meetings, to do conference calls, to do contests, it was just, we do a huge awards banquet every year. We take, actually in 2 weeks, I'm taking 85 people from my company to Tulum, Mexico for a sales incentive trip. And those are things that like you just kind of learned, real early in college, is like how to run. And that wasn't like, I wasn't an entrepreneur at the time. I was just, selling bookstore and just learning that. But I think it was just really, really valuable experience to go through that process. And a lot of that transitioned into, ironically, running a medical company. So that was like basically the college experience. And then when I left college, I always, growing up in the 80s, like you watch those stockbrokers, movies, and it's like, I always want to be a stockbroker. So all the way through college, I studied, and all I talked about was becoming a stockbroker. And the funny thing is I tell anybody young, I'm like, you got to intern or go work, spend a summer working in the field that you want to work in. I didn't do that. So I jumped in, I got my Series 7, my Series 66, became a stockbroker, and I hated it. I was the worst stockbroker in the whole, there's like 56 stockbrokers at Edward Jones in the Sacramento region. And every month I would try so hard to not be number 56. Me and this one guy would go 55, 56 every month, who would be the worst. And I was trying to fight to not be the worst person. And the irony is, like, I ended up doing pretty good. So, like, you guys know my story and where I'm at now. So I ended up doing pretty good in medical sales and then really good as a CEO. I was a horrible stockbroker because I kind of joke with people and I'm laid back, and like, I don't know, like sometimes when you got like an older client that has, it's high net worth and they want something a little more serious, and I was pretty young at the time. So, but I think it's good for people to know. I've spoke to a bunch of colleges, like Cal Poly brought me back to speak as an alumni speaker. And I've spoken at a number of other universities just for college kids, like what, life lessons, what you learned and all that. And I do think it's true. Like, just because you're not good at one thing, like, I don't think I'd be even if I was still a stockbroker today, I don't think I would have been that great. Like, it's just not, it wasn't my forte kind of thing. But you learn like what you're good at when you're not. And sometimes there's times in life where you got to stick with things and be persistent and see them through. And that's kind of how medical was for me, because I knew that I could eventually be good. I just got to push through it. But being a stockbroker, I'm like, this is just not me. It's not who I am. I'm not happy. And so one of the best things I decided was to leave being a stockbroker. And then I had some friends in the medical device space. So I went over and worked for a company, W-2 employee, was doing pretty good. The funny thing is, my wife told me never to start my company. I was making about 300. I think my second year in medical sales, I made 300 grand. And my third year, I made like 380,000 as a med device rep. I was like one of the top 3% reps at the company when I left. Always wanted to start my own business. Like, it was one of those things, like when I'm 80 years old or 90 or whatever, I want to look back at my life and be like, hey, I gave this a shot. I started my own thing. I built something that was mine. And I kept telling her that. And she's like, yeah, that's great, but you're making good money. I don't want, we had probably like 200 grand saved up in the bank at the time. And she's like, I don't want you to use our life savings to go start this business. And then you fail, and then we have nothing and you're out of a job. And for me, I'm like, I'm willing to take that risk. Because at the time I was, 28 years old. I'm like, I got a lot of years ahead of me. I can, even if I mess this up, I'll go back and get a new job. But I think a lot of people are, it's hard to take those risks in life. And so I did it. I bet on myself, and I went and took that 200 grand and bought a ton of medical devices. And then I went out there and just, started selling them, and then brought in a few sales reps underneath me, taught them what I did. And then we just kept growing it. And then, over time we got our own patents. We kind of found some niche products that were really good in the med device space. And then we ended up inventing some technology along the way. I mean, the last 12 years has been a whirlwind of hard work and, new FDA approvals and all that. But it's, in the beginning, it was like taking that risk to even do it was kind of scary, because you go from like having 200 grand in the bank, feeling pretty good, you're confident where you're at in life. And you're like, man, if this doesn't work out, like, we're kind of screwed, like, so, but yeah, that's kind of how it started.
But was it after you do the financial advisor, then you start selling the medical devices? How was there a specific idea? Did you invent something? Like, what was the first thing that Precision Medical sold?
Yeah. So when I get in the med device for a couple of years, I was already in the orthopedic space. So I already knew orthopedic surgeons. I knew the procedures. I knew how everything in the clinic and hospital worked. So I went and brought them new products. I think in the very beginning we sold like 25 different products just because we were trying everything, kind of, see what sticks, see what people like, see what, really hits. And through the process, we found a huge need in the market. The number two way people die in the hospital is through blood clots. And I think it's one thing that we did very good at the beginning. Me and the first couple of sales reps, we would just ask a ton of questions. Like, how can we help? What are the needs? What are the needs you guys have? How can we be of value? Because sometimes in medical, there's certain segments that have like they're oversaturated. Almost like in the implant division, you got like Stryker, Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Synthes. You just go down the line. There's like hundreds of companies that all do the same kind of implants, and it's very, very competitive. So we just started asking, how can we be different? What is it you need that you don't, currently have? And long story short, basically came DVT prevention was, people were dying from blood clots, and there wasn't a lot of good alternatives for doctors. So we went out there and researched it, found out what was out there, how to bill it, what insurance was paid for, what they didn't. And then we got some good products along the way that it kind of helped the surgeons with that. And then through the process, a lot of the products were hooked up to cords, power cords and tubes to inflate the devices. And we were just kind of like, how do we do this without making, being tubeless and cordless is really would set us apart. So like, how do we do that? And then the last 3 years, we've really spent a lot of time and got patents around the data management. So we're like, the whole world's going towards data. It's like, how do we control the data? And we got patents around, like on our device, we have the physiological parameters around DVT prevention. So if anybody tried to do that now, they couldn't do it. We already have all the patents around the pulling data from a DVT unit. And that's kind of like created a moat in the industry for us that's allowed us to really innovate and grow. And that's kind of like where our niche is. We still do other products, but the DVT prevention is like probably 80% of the total revenue of our company. It makes up the vast majority of what we do.
But Jeremy, you got to admit, this is pretty remarkable. You have this desire to start a business, to be an entrepreneur, but you go on this journey, and if you don't mind me sharing, you let us know that you kind of grew up poor. You go from selling books, financial advisory, pivot into the medical device. Did you ever think that the business that you would actually start would be in the medical device world?
Oh, no, not a chance. Like I think I failed like college biology, and my degree in college was in the School of Business with a focus on industrial technologies. Like the medical thing, like I said, I always thought I'd be a stock. I'm going to own a brokerage firm one day. I'll have like a ton of stockbrokers under me. Like that's kind of what I always thought. So the medical thing kind of just happened, it was like, had some friends already in it. And I think a lot of that, and there's so many great books on this, it's like finding purpose in life. When I went into medical, like it just clicked for me. Like I loved helping patients and seeing people get better and healing and just the whole experience. Like it made me really happy. Like when I got up in the morning, the last decade or the last 12 years, I'm not pretty motivated. Like I get up, I'm like, I have a purpose of what I want to do. We really believe like what we do does save lives. And we're passionate about that. We end up giving away a lot of money every year we built a big orphanage in Mexico. We donate like a ton of money. We've always said from the beginning, like our goal is to have 20 millionaires in our company. I think we've already created 13 of them, I believe. And we've always had like a giving back kind of thing. And that's the thing too. Like if you're just being really honest, like how much money do you need in life? Like, if you have $1 million, are you happy? Or is it 5 million or, 10? Like it gets to a point though. It's like, what else? I remember I wrote a book. I read a book. It's called Delivering Happiness. I don't know if you guys ever read that. It's by Tony Hsieh.
Yeah.
You remember like the very beginning of the book, he talks about, he sold his company and he's like, you think you want all this money in life and you buy, your dream house, let's say you spend $5 million, you buy your dream car and you get your TV. And he's like, after that, like what else? There's really like, it's kind of weird. Like money else is like not important anymore. It's like time's important, family's important, relationships are important, your health's important. Like other things become more important, I'd say money now for me is not like money doesn't motivate me at all for like what I would do with money at all. Like there's almost zero motivation for that. Money's more of a resource. It's like, okay, if we've got X amount of dollars, we can do, we can bring in our own FDA approval team. We got, this amount over here, we can bring in, we can buy these insurance contracts over here for billing in these new states we want to go into. It just becomes more of like like a chessboard move than anything. But I would say on the flip side, the first 5 years, money was super motivating. Like I was motivated by money because like, I did grow up poor. We didn't have a nice house and was living in an apartment. And I'm like, I want to have kids one day and let them have like, a backyard and a pool and a good place to grow up. And that did super motivate me. So I think that's kind of, money's like one of those tricky things. It can be a big motivator, but then, you reach a certain point, it's like law of diminishing returns. Maybe money's not as motivating anymore. So that's why I think the medical for us, we have a huge purpose to save lives. And we think what we do makes a difference. And that's what motivates us right now.
Alrighty, let's just take a quick break here and discuss a new type of investment available to Americans. One the wealthy have not only used to hedge against inflation, but hopefully safeguard and grow their wealth for centuries. This overlooked asset class historically outperforms the traditional U.S. real estate market and provides a better safety hedge than gold. It also outperformed the S&P 500 by 174% from 1995 to 2020. However, there's one problem. Until recently, it was off limits to everyday investors. But that's all changed because thanks to a little-known law, everyday Americans can now have the opportunity to invest in this previously untouchable asset class, hopefully allowing you to not only secure your wealth and weather major economic downturns, but also potentially grow it. To discover how you can now take advantage of this new opportunity and invest in fractional shares representing world-famous blue-chip artworks that have historically beat other asset classes, to explore this newly unlocked 6 trillion asset class, go to masterworks.io/unveiled. Again, that's masterworks.io/unveiled. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/disclaimer. So thanks to Masterworks for sponsoring today's episode. When you support our sponsors, you support the show. So again, masterworks.io/unveiled. And now let's continue to the interview with Jeremy.
What was that conversation like? You mentioned it a little bit with your wife. You had the couple $100,000 in the bank. What was that final, hey, we're going to do this. We're all on board. I'm going to support you. And then how much did you end up using of that initial capital to get your business off the ground?
Oh, man. I would say that in my marriage, like I was like, I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing it. She fought me for a little while. She's like, I don't think you should. I'm like, I'm doing it either way. I'm like kind of like one of those determined people. And she's like, hey, look, I know you're going to do it. So just, best wishes. I'm not, I don't support it and it's not what I want you to do, but I think you're going to do it, either way. It wasn't like I want to say that it wasn't like a debate or a discussion. I was just like really dead set. I mean, I think I said a couple minutes ago, like I just always want to start a business, and it's like, so how much of it did I use? I used all of it. Like that's, I think one of the, slight edge principles in life, like that's kind of how it's one of our core values as a company is intensity and going all in. And it's like, I've heard so many entrepreneurs tell this story of like just burning, what they call burn the bridge, or, you put the ship out and you're like, you just got to go for it. That's kind of what I did, because $200,000, at the time sounded like a lot of money, but when you get in the medical device world, like if you're buying product overseas and shipping it on containers and doing all that, $200,000 doesn't, it's only like half a container. It's not that much. Like we spend, gosh, what do we spend now? We spend probably about $2 million a month on products. We may even spend more than that. So looking back now, $200,000 is like nothing in terms of like what it takes to fund a medical device company. It was minimal, but it was all in. Had to go for it.
Totally. How long did it take you to really feel like your business had some legs, where you're like, hey, this is going to work. I'm going to get to an income level that's comfortable and sufficient, and I've got a really full-fledged business kind of rolling here now.
Yeah. Can I make a side comment and then I'll answer that question?
Totally. Go ahead.
I'm writing a book right now, so I'm going to plug my book, and by plugging it, I probably won't be out for another year. Probably a really premature plug, but whatever. The book is all written around this idea of, finding purpose and because I think if everybody has like a different journey, like different things motivate people totally differently. And if you can find, so like for me, I am like pretty, like I'm an A-type, like go-getter. Like I'm one of those, my wife always jokes like that I would like piss off a best friend during like a board game because I want to win, like I just, it's not about like the money or these, like about that will to win, and I think if you map out your life, right, a lot of people don't do this. I did a CEO program at Harvard. So I didn't have like really, any background running a company. So I did a program for 3 years at MIT and then 1 year at Harvard. And there's so many studies on just goal setting. And when you really break it down, like life's not that difficult. Like we overcomplicate it, but it really comes down to like, you decide what the goals are for you personally. And everybody's different. People have like different relationship goals or spiritual goals or health goals or whatever it might be. And for me, it was like I had some big goals for business and finance. And I did do a good job in the very beginning of like mapping out like what those goals were, and then just going step by step and like how do you get to those goals, And I think that's the reason I kind of mentioned that book and what it is. Everybody's different, right? Like some people might have a goal like having $1 million in life or 10 million or 100 million. And, there's some people that want to be billionaires. Like, I don't think there's nobody better or worse than anybody. It's just like, you just have different things that motivate you. Some people want big, I got 4 kids. Some people want big families. Some people don't want any kids. Some people want to be married. Some people rather live a life and be single. Like I think as long as you identify what it is you really, really want and what makes you happy, and then you just set goals around that and come up with a plan, it's actually pretty easy, and that's kind of what I think. And I'm trying to make it, not trying to make it really simple, but that's kind of what I did in the beginning. It's just like wrote down all these life goals and then just came out with a plan of like how you do that. And we do that every quarter. Like right now, I can tell you right now to the day, look at my calendar, and we're the very, very end of Q2. So we run it off have you ever heard of the book 12-Week Year?
No, I haven't. Maybe Jace has.
So
no, I haven't either.
It's a huge mistake people make. And it's like, if there's probably like one takeaway people listening can get, it's this one thing. Everybody does annual goals, right? They go, oh, here, it's New Year's Eve. I'm going to sell these goals for the year. And then most people will come like February, March, don't hit their goals. They kind of give up and then forget about it. The 12-week year, it's a principle. You sprint for 12 weeks. And then week 13, because there's 13 weeks in every quarter. Okay. So right now, if you look at the calendar, we're on week 13 right now. So this is for our company. So for my company, for my kids, for my health goals, everything. Week 13, I'm looking back at like what I accomplished the last 12 weeks, and then what are my goals for the next 12 weeks. So I break my year into 4 quarters, but I do this we just had a huge meeting on this morning. We're releasing all the corporate goals next week for the new quarter, and we do these quarterly sprints. And if you can compress, what most people do in a year, compress it down to a quarter, and you're like, let's just imagine if you said, here's everything I want to get done in a year, and I'm going to try and do that in 3 months. You might not do it, but even if you get close, you do it in 4 or 5 months, like still a great win, So we started just doing compression, where we just compress everything into 12 weeks, try and sprint really hard, get it all done, and then on week 13 revamp. It's made an astronomical difference just in so much stuff. And the principle on it's not a business principle. It's actually 2 of my best friends in the world are famous UFC fighters. I don't know if you guys know Uriah Faber or Cody Garbrandt. I don't know if you know those names at all.
Mm-mm.
So they're big UFC. Uriah's a Hall of Fame UFC fighter. There's only 26 fighters in the world that are Hall of Fame, and Uriah's one of them. And when they do their training, they stay in good shape all year, but before they go in a fight, they compress everything down to 12 weeks. And that's where they get in optimal shape. It's within a 12-week program. So it's that same methodology. And I think it doesn't matter even if you're an entrepreneur or, you have a job somewhere, or you're trying to do, workouts or just spiritual, anything. Like you could do the 12-week year and compression, like it really works in all areas of life.
Do you ever feel like it rushes behavior, Jeremy? Like you have a goal to buy a rental or something. I'm just thinking of a random example, and you're so hard pressed to get it done so that you can accomplish the goal and check it off that you buy a bad investment or something. Or in business, maybe you want to get to a certain spot, but oh shoot, we're at week 8. I mean, it could be the same for the end of the year, and you hurry and do something and make a bad decision. Or does that really not seem to happen?
I think it does. I think what it does, though, is you're going to make bad decisions in life in general. And it's that old analogy where it's like the person takes 1,000 swings is still going to hit a few home runs, And if you only take 10 swings, you're probably not going to hit a home run,
right?
Right. So like we get a lot of swings at the bat because we're compressing a lot. We're running really, really fast. And it's not always perfect, but we're definitely taking more swings at the bat. That's for sure.
Sure. So when did that start happening? When did goal setting start being a big part of your life? Was that always the case, or just since you started this company?
No, I'd say like I definitely learned the goal setting was really, really big on the door-to-door book company, because that's, kind of how you find motivation. It's a hard job is, when you're in the summer, 80 hours a week, knocking on doors, and it's like, it's hard to find motivation, but you gotta like, why am I out here this summer? Why am I selling? Why am I, what is it, for me, I was like, if I can go make 5 or 10 grand this summer, that can help pay for my college and it can get me by. And then, if I go to college, I can, have a better job in life. So that was kind of the motivation,
Yeah. So let me just jump back here to purpose. You mentioned purpose and finding yours. And I know Jace mentioned this a little bit. You were earlier in the show, you talked about really helping people and having an impact. How do you feel like your purpose and what's driven you throughout your life changed from when you were selling books door to door to now? Because earlier you said money was a motivator. Maybe now it's not. But how has that purpose shifted?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of cheesy. Like I do all those weird things. Like I have a vision board. I have like positive affirmations written out. I have like, I'm just like, I've got this like list of like the 57 countries I want to visit, like I have like, I'm big into all that stuff. I think it makes a big difference. And it's weird because I'll tell you this, a lot of people don't do it. Like I ask people all the time, they're always like, hey, what advice I have? I'm like, what's your goals? They're like, I got kind of this, kind of that. I'm like, show me your goals. I want to see them written down. Oh, I don't have them written down. It's like, okay, so like, if you just do the little things, like take an hour and write out your goals. Like nobody does that, right? Sounds simple, but nobody does it. It's like, okay, now when you write out your goals, what's the plan for each goal? You want to buy a house one day. Well, how are you going to do that? What kind of houses is it? Is it 300 grand, 400 grand, 500 grand? What down payment do you need? How do you save up for that? What's it look like? So like, you just take each goal and you break it down, and then you kind of come up with a plan. Like that, buying a house, you probably couldn't do it that quarter. So that's not going to be a quarterly goal for you. But maybe that's a goal that you have 2 years from now, once you save up, And that's what I was saying. Like, I just think so much of it is probably simpler than people think. It took me a lot. You ask everybody who's a millionaire, or like I got the opportunity to meet 6 billionaires in my life and be mentored by them. Like, and that's part of the Harvard and MIT program. And the funny thing is, like, when you meet these billionaires, they make it sound so simple. They're like, oh, the first million was way harder. It was harder to get to 1 million than it was to get to 100 million. And it was easier to get to 1 billion than it was from like every step later was like way easier. That the first million was way harder. And you just kind of hear that over and over again. And I think in the very beginning, I had nothing when I started it. Even when I say I had 200 grand in the bank, that was because I worked really hard. I had a good job and I saved up, and I just was continuously saving and investing and all that. But it really came down to like, goal setting, what inspired me, and then coming up with a plan and putting that all on paper, and then just seeing it. Like, that's like very motivating. But I really, and then all the studies say like 90, it's something crazy, like 97% of people just don't do that.
Yeah. So is the financial goal to be a billionaire now?
Yeah, I mean that'd be that's like on my goal list. As one of the things I wrote down is like be a billionaire, but it's not. It's probably not. It's probably deceptive. Like if a listener was saying they're like, oh, you want to be a billionaire? Like it's not. It's not the billion. It's like it's just more of like a. I think it's like checking off a box in life. Like I was able to grow a company. Like I have all the math now of how to do it. So we're going to do another acquisition this year. It'll dilute me if I take it public. There's a bunch of like scenarios and stuff where I really need the company to be at 2 billion for me to be worth 1 billion. And I have a plan to get the company to 2 billion. But if I was worth $1 billion, I'd probably give away 96% of it. Like I don't know what I would do with all that. I mean, all that money. It's not like, so the money is not the motivator. On the, to be a billionaire is more like, well, how many is there's like what is it? The number changed every year. It's like 700 billionaires in the U.S., something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember. I looked it up the other day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably off by a couple hundred or something, but there's not a ton of people who have done it. It's more of like to be able to like be proud that you created $1 billion companies, or that's
Sure.
more the motivation than anything.
Sure. So giving money away, you mentioned. When you have all these different things pulling at your time and different opportunities to invest or to run the business, or obviously you have your 4 kids and family and friends, how do you decide who to give to and how much to give? Because I think that's something people struggle with, even if their net worth 500,000 or $1 million, because they want to have an impact. But when you feel like the money you give can have a greater impact, how does that weigh on you, and how do you decide what causes you want to be involved in?
My personal investment philosophy on that is like, this is different for everybody, kind of thing. For me, like I became Christian when I was like 20 years old in college. And for me, that was like, probably I'd say that, what you believe in and then who you get married to are probably the 2 biggest decisions you make. So for me, I donate primarily to Christian organizations because I think, that just, it correlates with my belief system. So I give to Christian organizations, and I like to have a hyper focus on kids. So that's why we do the orphanages, and we do, donate to, help out with the issues around sex trafficking and everything in Southeast Asia. Like that's what motivates me, but that just resonates with me. Is it? I got 4 kids, and it's like, just seeing kids grow up poor in other countries, like they didn't, that's just, I have a heart for it. So that's what I give to, I bet there's like probably 1,000 great things to give to. It's not like, I think it's so, yeah.
I agree. 1 million good causes. So with that, you have charitable organizations, you have the 3 things that you mentioned you spend the most time on, which is your main company, angel investing, real estate. How do you decide who gets your time?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. That's like, and there's probably more value now in my life on time than there's on money, right? Like that's, in the beginning, it wasn't like that. Like I just, you want to get money, and I'll do whatever amount of time it takes to get it. You kind of do it. Now it's like I pass on a lot of things that are potentially good investments and good opportunities just because they take up a lot of my time, and I just don't have like the bandwidth for it. So yeah, I think being really, I kind of stay in my lane in terms of being the founder and CEO of my company. I dedicate 90% of my time, in terms of like business hours to that. That's, really the focus. Even the building acquisitions and stuff, they're kind of correlated to our business. So it's like, even though we're buying buildings on the side and all that, it's still kind of relates to the, to the business. On the angel investing side, I've looked at, I'd say well over 100 companies, probably well over 200 companies now. And I've invested in 13. Probably the biggest lesson I learned on that, if anybody is on here doing investments with like early stage companies, I try and find a company that's got unique technology that's something that really has the potential to go big. So I get approached all the time. People are like, "Oh, I've got this restaurant, I got this bar, whatever." I'm out right away. Not interested. Like, 'cause it's not another restaurant. It could be really good. They can make profit, all that. And I've invested in actually in one restaurant, and it's like, I learned the hard way. Like there's just not enough. It's not scalable, So I'm automatically out on anything like that. So it has to be 2 things, either technology or patents. And the biggest home run I've hit on investing, a company called Freeform Technologies. They had jet skis and wave runners, but they that were electric, and they had the prototypes. They never ended up developing one, but the kid that started it was 24 years old. He was the only employee in the company, and he had all the thermoforming patents on electric jet skis. And I had my patent attorney review it, and the patent attorney is like, yes, these patents are legit. If Tesla or any electric watercraft company ever wanted to put an electric watercraft on water, they'd have to use this kid's patents in some way. And automatically I'm like, I'm in, And this kid had no revenue. He was burning cash. It was like, on paper, it was the worst company ever, but he had the patents. I'm like, these patents they're going to be worth something, So I joined the board of directors with him, helped him kind of, put some business structure to it. He was really talented. We grew the company. It actually, when I say grew it was like more the infrastructure growing it. It still didn't have any revenue. We ended up selling it to Nikola. Trevor Milton came in and bought it. And this is the early stage before Nikola went public. So they bought it from us. They bought it with Nikola stock. And then Nikola ended up forming into a SPAC, and then they went public. So I was the lead investor in that company, and I put $100,000 down at first. And then I tried to get other investors in Sacramento to invest, and nobody would do it. And then the kid was going to go bankrupt. So I gave him another $200,000. I ended up being $350,000 all in. And I was a lead investor in it. And that $350,000 turned into $7 million. So we got a 20x return when we ended up selling it to Nikola. But
how'd you find that?
I just looked at, because in Sacramento, like there was you go back to like the time being important. I'm kind of pretty hardcore. Like when I do these investment meetings, I'm like, they're 45 minutes and you better start pitching from the moment I walk in, because that's all you get, because it's like, I was doing these like, once a month, I meet with 2 or 3 companies each month to try and see what they were doing. And it becomes really, it's a time burden. I look at pitch decks from a ton of people, see if I was interested in a few. Then I'd have the few come in once a month to look at them. And he was one of the ones that came in. So I try and vet them in the beginning for technology or patents. And if they got that, then I sit down with them and then just kind of, hear their story, what they want to do, what their goals are, how I could help. And then that's kind of like, how that's been my approach on the angel investing.
Jeremy, that's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. One question that comes in from our listeners a lot is, what are you doing specifically to help your children as it relates to money, investments, and mindset and purpose in life?
Oh, that's such a good question, man. I had all these because when I sold bookstore to door in college, like I was literally meeting with families. Like I do 1,000 presentations a summer, and I talked to them about their kids and what their goals were. And it's like I was like hyper focused, like how to raise kids and schooling and all that. It's funny, like once you start raising, like for example, I'd be like, oh, you see these families that go out and the kids are on their iPads at dinner and they're not even talking to the parents. I'm like, I'm never gonna have kids like that. And then I'll be sitting there and I realize like all 4 of my kids have iPads and I'm like enjoying my dinner. I'm like, I don't even care. I don't care. People can judge away. I'm like, I've had a long day. It's nice to just grab a drink and enjoy the dinner, So it's I don't know. Like I wouldn't say my kids are 12, 10, 8, and 5. So like I've taken them door to door a few times selling just because I think that was a good experience. They all hated it. They never want to do it again. Like I don't know if I've always told them like I want to do a business with them one day and all that, but I don't know. Like I don't know if I got any great business stuff for my kids. I think what I've spent more time on, it's something that I look back. My dad just passed away 3 months ago, and it was like probably like one of the saddest things to happen to me in my life. And it made me look back like on what the impact my dad made in my life. And one of the biggest things I pulled from from doing that was my dad created in me this because my dad wasn't a business guy. He worked for Allstate Insurance as a claims adjuster for 25 years and hardworking guy and stuff, but he was he was a salary employee and he did okay, but he's just, but that guy my dad had a will to win. And in sports, he would, he coached all of our soccer teams and baseball team and basketball. And it was funny because my dad actually got kicked out of he was a baseball coach till age 12, and they kicked him out of the league because he was too competitive. And it's because it's like the whole like snowflake culture where people are like, everybody wins, you all get a trophy, good job, great job for coming out here. My dad was like the opposite. He's like, if I struck out, he'd be like, you need to get better, you need to work harder. And he was, we lose a game, and I'd be on the bench just so mad, like frustrated. I remember one day I was like crying on the bench because we lost, and he's like, it's good to cry. Like I had parents come to me like, don't cry. Just a game. You're out here for fun. And my dad, waited till his parents left, and he'd come up to me. He's like, it's not just a game. You should want to win, and you crying is like not a bad thing. You should want to beat these kids. Like that's good to have a competitive spirit, And I think I've tried to do that with, and there's a balance to it. You don't want to be like a competitive wacko or anything, but I did that with my little girl got into soccer, and she would run around the field and wouldn't care. Like the ball would go one way, she'd go the other. She was like probably I would say unarguably the worst kid on the soccer team. And then I went out there at halftime, and I was like really frustrated with her. I said, Ella, I didn't come all the way out here to watch you just run around. I'm pissed off, and I'm really upset. You're not trying at all. It makes me mad. I just want you to try. So I'm like, I'll give you. We do a star program in our house where I get stars out for doing good things. I'm like, if you score a goal, I'll give you 10 stars. And essentially, a star is like $1. So when you score a goal, you get 10 stars, and I'll take you to Target after, and we'll go shopping. And it's funny, like she was the worst kid on the team. And then that game, I told her at halftime, she tried really hard to get a goal. She didn't get a goal. But the next game, she got 3 goals. And in the game after that, she got 4. And then at the end of the season, she had more goals than every kid on the team combined. Like she ended up being like, no joke, like the best kid in the league. Like, and she was the worst. It's not even like, I'm not even making this up. The parents were just blown away. Right? She sat the bench all the time, didn't do anything. It was all about like, because she didn't really care about soccer, but she really cared about getting these stars, and she wanted to like save up money for these certain toys. And she was putting balls in the net where they had to like pull her off the field. Like you're running the score up on these like teams. Like, so I think that's been like, one of the few like learning things for, raising kids, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jeremy. I mean, we could go on with you all day. We didn't even talk about scaling a business. We just got a minute or two left here. So final words of advice to somebody if they come to you and say, hey, give me some advice. How did you do it? Obviously you hit on the goal setting, but what would mistakes be, or what would your final advice be here?
Oh, final advice. I'd say it was like one of my friends asking me, or, we have like 350 employees. I just say, think big, and it doesn't have, whether it's, that's part of like why I'm writing this book. It doesn't have to be it could be in fitness, or it could be in your relationships, it could be in traveling, or whatever it is. Like just set really, really big goals. If you want to travel, go see 100 countries. If you're working out, like set a goal to try and be a bodybuilder, and just think really, really big. Because there's something magical. There's the book Magic of Thinking Big. It's like you start thinking big, and it's like all of a sudden like there's so much potential. Like what can we do here? What can we do there? And your mind just starts going, and like opportunities just start opening up. And I think the creativity comes in, and just I think that's probably like the one piece of advice I'd say is think really, really big.
Yeah. Your wife agree with this, or she think you're crazy?
She's just programmed different, she's a really good mom. She's like she has no risk tolerance. It's like no risk, very patient, good with, like we're set up, our brains are set up differently.
Yeah. All right, Jeremy. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Thanks for spending the time, and thank you. I mean, what a great interview. So thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks, Clark. Thanks, Jace.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.